At 5:42 a.m., the glass doors of the private aviation terminal slid open, and every conversation inside seemed to pause for half a second. The building stood on the far edge of Teterboro Airport, polished marble floors reflecting soft golden light, leather chairs arranged beside floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking sleek white jets. Inside, men in tailored suits sipped espresso while assistants whispered into Bluetooth headsets. It was the kind of place where wealth didn't announce itself loudly. It simply existed, and then she walked in. Ava Monroe wore a charcoal coat over a fitted navy dress, her heels clicking softly against the marble. Her hair was pulled back in a low bun, simple diamond studs catching the light. She carried no designer handbag covered in logos, just a slim black briefcase. The receptionist glanced up. Her smile froze. "Catering is through the service entrance," the woman said automatically, not even checking the screen in front of her. Ava stopped. "I'm here for the 7:15 departure to Chicago," she replied calmly. The receptionist blinked, then let out a polite laugh. "Yes, Mom. The crew briefing is downstairs." "I'm not crew." Now a few nearby heads turned. A tall man in a navy suit, silver name badge reading operations manager, stepped forward. "Is there a problem?" "She's looking for catering access," the receptionist said. Ava kept her voice even. "No. I'm boarding flight NX-271. The manager's smile tightened. "Passengers for NX-271 have already checked in. I'm aware. And your name?" "Ava Monroe." He glanced at the tablet scroll, paused, his brows knit together. "I don't see you listed." "That's impossible." Behind her, a pair of executives exchanged amused glances. One of them whispered, not quietly enough, "Every year it's something." Ava felt the heat crawl up her neck. She had spent her life navigating rooms where she was underestimated before she spoke. But this was different. This wasn't a restaurant table or a boutique. This was her company's jet. The manager cleared his throat. "Ma'am, this is a secure terminal. If you're with catering, I'll have someone escort you. I am not with catering." His voice sharpened. "Then perhaps you're mistaken about your departure." Ava held his gaze. "Call Daniel Brooks." The name landed heavily. The manager hesitated. Daniel Brooks was the CEO of Northex Aviation. It wasn't someone random people just named Drupton. "What is your relationship to Mr. Brooks?" he asked carefully. Ava didn't answer immediately. She watched the doubt in his eyes, the quiet certainty that she did not belong here. "Call him," she repeated. Instead, he signaled to security. Two uniformed guards approached. "Ma'am," one said gently, "we're going to need you to step aside." Murmurs rippled through the lounge. Phones subtly lifted. Ava exhaled slowly. "You're making a mistake." The manager's jaw tightened. "We deal with hyperfuel clients. We can't have disruptions." "Disruptions," she echoed softly. "You're not on the manifest." Ava reached into her coat and pulled out her phone. For a split second, the manager looked relieved, assuming she was about to call whoever had misinformed her. Instead, she opened an email. Subject line: "Acquisition confirmation to 51% controlling stake." She looked up. "Check the updated ownership records," she said. The manager frowned. "Ownership records?" "Yes." He laughed lightly, irritation slipping through. "Ma'am, Northex Aviation is privately held." "Not anymore." Silence. He stared at her, trying to decide whether she was delusional or bold. "Security," he said quietly, "escort her out." One guard reached for her arm. And that was when Daniel Brooks came running from the back hallway. Tie half nodded, face pale. "Stop!" he shouted. Every head turned. He hurried across the marble floor and stopped in front of Ava. "Ms. Monroe," he said breathlessly, extending his hand. The manager's face drained of color. "I apologize for the confusion." The room felt like it had dropped 10 degrees. Ava did not take Daniel's hand immediately. She looked at the manager instead. "Confusion?" she asked. Daniel swallowed. There was a delay updating the internal system after last night's transaction. The executives near the window straightened. The receptionist's fingers trembled above the keyboard. The manager's voice barely worked. "Transactionist." Daniel nodded stiffly. "As of 9:47 p.m. yesterday, Ms. Monroe acquired 51% of Northex Aviation." The word seemed to echo. 51%, controlling stake, the majority owner. Ava finally extended her hand, shaking Daniel's briefly. "I assume my jet is ready," she asked calmly. "Yes, ma'am." Fully fueled. The manager's mouth opened, then closed. Security stepped back immediately. One of the executives whispered, "Oh my God." Phones that had been recording humiliation were now capturing shock. The receptionist stammered, We had no idea." Ava turned to her gently. "That's the point." The manager tried to speak. "Ms. Monroe, she held up a hand. "For the past 6 minutes, you assumed I was staff." His face reddened. "You didn't verify. You didn't ask questions beyond the surface. You saw me and decided it was a misunderstanding," he insisted weakly. "It was an assumption." And the lounge was utterly silent. Ava walked toward the window overlooking the jet. Her jet, sleek, white, with the Nortlex logo shining beneath the rising sun. "When I was 16, she said without turning around, "my mother cleaned office buildings like this one. She wore a uniform very similar to what you imagined from me." No one moved. I watched executives walk past her without seeing her. I promised myself that one day I would own the building. She turned back slowly. "I just didn't expect to be mistaken for the help in my own company." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "We can address this privately." "No," Ava said firmly. "We'll address it right here." She walked back to the center of the lounge. "Effective immediately," she said clearly, "Northex Aviation will implement mandatory bias and equity training across all terminals." The manager's eyes widened. "Additionally, customer verification procedures will be standardized. No one will be escorted out without full confirmation." A ripple of whispers spread. Daniel nodded quickly. Of course, Ava's gaze landed on the manager again. "What's your name?" "Richard Cole." "Mr. Cole, how long have you worked here?" 12 years. 12 years of deciding who belongs." His shoulders slumped. "I've built this terminal's reputation," he said quietly, "and nearly destroyed it in under 10 minutes. His phone buzzed. He looked down instinctively. An email notification flashed across the screen. Subject: Immediate administrative leave. Sent by Daniel Brooks. Richard's breath caught. Ava hadn't even touched her phone. She simply said, "Leadership requires awareness. Until you learn it, you cannot represent my company." He looked up at her, stunned. "Security will not escort you," she added. "You may walk out with dignity." The irony hung heavy. Richard slowly removed his badge. The room watched him leave. Ava turned to the remaining staff. "I am not here to punish," she said. "I am here to change culture." Her eyes softened slightly. "But understand this. Access to wealth does not erase bias. It exposes it." Daniel cleared his throat. "Ms. Monroe, your flight will depart in 5 minutes." She finished. As she walked toward the doors leading to the runway, something unexpected happened. The receptionist stepped out from behind the desk. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Ava paused. "For what?" "For not asking your name first." Ava studied her. "Remember this moment," she said gently. "Not because I own this place, but because the next woman who walks in might not." The doors opened. Cold morning air rushed in. The jet's engines hummed softly. Cameras followed her across the tarmac. By the time she climbed the steps and turned once before entering, the video had already begun spreading online. "Private jet staff mistake billionaire owner for catering." Millions would watch it before noon. But inside the jet, as Ava settled into the cream leather seat, she didn't smile. She stared out the window. Owning the company didn't shield her from being judged. It simply gave her the power to respond. Her phone buzzed. A message from her mother. "I saw the video. I'm proud of you, but I'm not surprised." Ava's throat tightened. The plane began to taxi. Daniel's message followed seconds later. "Thank you for handling that with restraint," she typed back. "Restraint is temporary. Reform is permanent." As the jet lifted into the pale morning sky over New Jersey, the terminal below looked small, insignificant. But the moment inside it would ripple outward. Within days, Northex announced new diversity initiatives. Terminal policies were rewritten. Anonymous reporting systems launched. Competitors took notice. Investors praised the bold leadership transition. News outlets requested interviews. But Ava declined most of them. Because this wasn't about headlines. It was about that 6-minute window where people revealed exactly what they believed, and what they believed had cost them. Somewhere below, Richard Cole packed his office in silence. Somewhere else, a young black girl would watch that viral clip and see something different. Not humiliation, authority. A jet leveled above the clouds. Ava closed her eyes briefly. She had not bought Northex for revenge. She bought it because she understood something powerful. The rooms that exclude you often need new ownership, and sometimes the only way to change a system is to own it. The jet cruised steadily above the clouds, engines humming like a quiet promise. Ava leaned back in the cream leather seat, but her mind refused to rest. Her phone kept vibrating against the armrest. Notifications, mentions, headlines forming in real time. Billionaire owner mistaken for staff at own aviation terminal. Racial profiling scandal hits private jet industry. She turned the phone face down. Across from her, Daniel sat stiffly, still shaken. The board is an emergency session, he said carefully. They're worried about reputation damage. Ava let out a slow breath. Reputation damage existed long before this morning. It just wasn't recorded. He didn't argue. Outside the oval window, the sun climbed higher, flooding the cabin with gold light. It reminded her of mornings years ago when she rode the bus across town to attend a school that didn't expect her to succeed. She remembered teachers mispronouncing her name even after corrections, guidance counselors suggesting more realistic goals. That word had followed her like a shadow. When she launched her first tech logistics startup at 24, investors smiled politely but declined. One had said, "We're not sure you're the right cultural fit for this scale." 2 years later, she sold that same company for $80 million. Cultural fit. The phrase made her jaw tighten even now. Daniel cleared his throat again. Richard is requesting a meeting before any final decisions are made. Ava's gaze stayed on the horizon. He'll have one today. Yes. Daniel looked surprised. You don't want distance? No, she said quietly. I want clarity. The jet began its descent into Chicago. The skyline shimmered ahead, sharp against the sky. Ava straightened her coat and closed her briefcase. When the aircraft touched down, her phone exploded again. This time, she opened one notification, a video clip. The moment security had reached for her arm, zoomed in, slowed down, captioned. She watched herself standing still, unflinching. Then she watched Richard's face when Daniel announced the acquisition. Shock, fear, realization. She paused the video. That expression, she murmured. Daniel followed her gaze. What about it? That's the moment he understood I wasn't who he thought I was. And who did he think you were? She met Daniel's eyes. Someone who didn't belong. The jet door opened. Cameras were waiting on the tarmac. Reporters called her name, Ms. Monroe. Was this racial profiling? Will you be firing more staff? Is this a lawsuit situation? She descended the steps slowly, controlled, every movement deliberate. When the microphones clustered around her, she didn't raise her voice. This is not about one employee, she said clearly. It's about unconscious bias in elite spaces that believe they are above it. Flashes popped. I was inconvenienced, she continued. But many people, without ownership, without resources, are removed, embarrassed, or silenced without recourse. That's the issue, a reporter shouted. Do you forgive him? Ava paused. Forgiveness isn't the headline, she replied. Accountability is. By evening, Northex Aviation's stock now partially public after the acquisition had surged. Investors praised decisive leadership. Social media buzzed with debate. Some commenters insisted it was a misunderstanding. Others called it exactly what it was. Back in New Jersey, Richard Cole sat across from Ava in a quiet conference room. No cameras, no audience. Just polished wood and silence. He looked smaller without the badge. I never intended, he began. I know, Ava interrupted gently. He frowned. You do? Yes. You didn't intend harm. You intended efficiency. He blinked. You saw someone who didn't match your mental image of a majority owner, she continued. And you moved quickly to correct what you assumed was a mistake. Richard swallowed hard. I've worked here my entire adult life, he said. I built this place, and you protected it, she said, from people who looked like me. The words settled heavily. He stared at the table. I didn't realize, he admitted quietly. That's the problem. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Ava leaned forward. You're not fired, she said. His head snapped up. You're suspended. Mandatory retraining. And when you return, it won't be as operations manager. His expression flickered between relief and humiliation. You'll lead the new Equity Oversight Division, she finished. He stared at her in disbelief. You want me to? Yes, she said firmly. You experienced the cost of assumption? Now you'll dismantle it? Why would you trust me with that? Because change doesn't happen by removing every flawed person, Ava replied. It happens when flawed people confront themselves. Richard's shoulders sagged. I'm sorry, he said again, but this time it sounded different, less defensive, more human. Ava nodded once. Make sure the apology extends beyond me. Weeks passed. NorthSex terminals across the country implemented blind verification systems. Customer manifests no longer displayed photos until identity was confirmed. Staff underwent scenario-based training. Complaints were logged transparently. News cycles moved on, but the policy changes remained. One afternoon, Ava visited the original terminal quietly. No press, no announcement. She walked through the glass doors again. This time, the receptionist smiled warmly. Good afternoon, Ms. Monroe. No hesitation, no assumption, just recognition. Ava glanced around the lounge. A Latina executive laughed with a colleague near the window. A black pilot reviewed flight plans beside a white captain. Staff moved efficiently but attentively. Richard stood near the entrance, observing interactions carefully. When he saw Ava, he approached. We've reduced complaint incidents by 40%, he reported. She studied his face. And what have you learned? She asked. He didn't rush to answer. That belonging shouldn't be determined in 5 seconds, he said finally. Ava allowed herself a small smile. Good. As she turned toward the runway once more, she caught her reflection in the glass. Same coat, same posture, same woman. The difference wasn't her wealth. It was the standard she set. Outside, another jet prepared for departure, engines roaring against the afternoon sky. Ava felt something steadier than triumph, impact. Because humiliation might go viral. But reform changes. Who gets stopped at the door next time? And that was always the real destination.